This is another podcast from Alpha Business Media. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into the really fascinating world of family businesses in Nepal.
Yeah, it's a great topic.
And the sources we've looked at, they really hammer home that these aren't just like small side operations.
Not at all.
They're basically the backbone of the whole Nepalese economy.
Yeah.
And the culture, too.
Absolutely. They touch everything, don't they? From the core agricultural sector
Right.
to things like handicrafts, tourism. They provide so many jobs.
And they're guardians of culture, too, in many ways.
Exactly. Keepers of tradition, local skills. Their health is just crucial for Nepal overall.
So we've got this source material, this report, that really digs into the complex challenges they're facing.
Mm-hmm.
It paints a picture of them being at a real crossroads, doesn't it? Between tradition and, the future.
It really does. And the source material, it focuses on four key areas, four big challenges.
Okay, what are they?
So first up, there's the fundamental challenge of transferring control. Succession.
The handover.
Exactly. How ownership passes from one generation to the next. It's complex anywhere. But you add Nepal's culture, family dynamics.
It gets even trickier.
It gets really intricate. Second is modernization. How do they actually adopt new tech, new ways of doing things to stay competitive?
Right, keeping up.
Then third, and this might sound a bit paradoxical after modernization, is preserving heritage.
Okay.
How do they hang on to that unique history, the values, the reputation that often defines them, gives them their edge?
Interesting tension there.
Mm.
And the fourth challenge?
The fourth one the source highlights is ensuring internal stability.
Meaning?
Well, all these changes, new leaders coming in, new tech, maybe shifting focus, it can stir up conflict within the family, within the business itself.
Okay.
And managing that friction is, vital, so it doesn't derail everything else.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting for me. It sounds like these challenges are totally interconnected.
Well, absolutely.
Like, if you try to tackle modernization really aggressively, but you don't think about succession properly, or you ignore the heritage aspect.
You could cause huge problems.
Yeah.
Exactly. The source material makes that point very clearly. Modernization might be needed, right?
Sure.
But if it's pushed through without respecting the older generation's experience or without getting buy-in from everyone.
People feel ignored, traditions trampled on.
Precisely. It damages relationships internally. And you risk losing the very thing that makes the business special, its heritage. It really calls for a thoughtful, integrated approach.
Which brings us to what we're trying to do in this deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
Based on this source material, we want to unpack these challenges, really understand the specific Nepalese context, and then explore some of the potential strategies the report suggests.
Yeah, give you a shortcut, basically, to getting your head around this whole complex picture.
Okay, let's start with that context then. To understand these businesses, you really need to understand the ground they operate on, Nepal's cultural and economic landscape.
Absolutely critical. And the report emphasizes just how deeply intertwined culture and economics are there.
So, culturally, what stands out?
Well, a few key things the source mentions. First, there's a very strong sense of hierarchy and a deep respect for elders.
Okay.
Decisions often flow top-down. The authority of senior family members is really significant. Now, that can bring stability, but it can also, slow down innovation. If new ideas from younger people aren't easily heard, or if they feel like they're challenging the established way.
Right, I can see how that might stifle things a bit.
It can.
Mhm.
Another big factor is the reliance on personal relationships and trust.
More so than just contracts.
Much more so, often. Business is built on connections, reputation, word of mouth is huge.
Like those examples you mentioned, the Bajeko Sakua restaurant chain. Or local bakeries.
Exactly. Their reputation built on trust and quality, that is their marketing, essentially, which can make adopting sort of impersonal, formal business processes a bit challenging sometimes.
You mentioned hospitality being important, too.
Yes, even simple things like offering tea, refreshments, it's standard practice. Builds rapport, builds that trust.
Okay. And what about this idea of saving face?
Ah, yes. That's crucial. It's about avoiding direct confrontation or criticism to maintain harmony.
So communication might be indirect.
Very often, yes. Which, it can prevent open arguments, keeps things smooth on the surface.
But the downside?
The downside is it makes it really hard to address underlying problems openly, especially across those hierarchical lines we talked about. Formal conflict resolution systems also tend to be complex, maybe expensive.
So issues could just simmer away.
Exactly. And finally, there's a strong sense of collectivism.
Family first.
Family or group interests often come before individual ones, which is great for cohesion, for sticking together.
But again, maybe not so great for individual initiative.
Sometimes, yeah, it can potentially stifle that individual spark, the risk-taking you often need for innovation.
Okay, that paints a really clear picture of the cultural side. What about the economic context they're operating in?
Also fundamental, agriculture is still the dominant force.
Really?
Still,
Oh, yeah.
big contributor to GDP, major employer. The report mentions key crops like rice, corn, wheat, and cash crops too, tea, coffee, cardamom, ginger.
And lots of family businesses are tied into that.
Deeply rooted in it, many of them. But agriculture itself faces some pretty big hurdles.
Such as?
Well, land fragmentation is a big one. Lots of small plots of land.
Makes using big machinery hard.
Exactly. Hinders mechanization, commercialization. Then there's access to capital and technology. Loans can be tough to get. Tech is expensive.
And infrastructure. I imagine that's a challenge.
A major limitation, the source says. Irrigation only covers about, 29% of arable land. Transport links, roads can be poor, especially rurally. Electricity, internet access, inconsistent.
And you mentioned people leaving, the labor situation.
Yeah, that's a significant issue, a shortage of skilled labor, because so many young Nepalists migrate abroad for work.
Brain drain, essentially.
You could call it that. And it's felt particularly hard in agriculture and tourism, pushes up labor costs for the businesses that remain.
Which links directly to remittances, doesn't it?
It does. Remittances are absolutely huge. Around 25% of GDP, the report estimates.
Wow.
Yeah, nearly $9 billion in just the first 9 months of the current fiscal year. It provides vital income, obviously.
But there's a downside. You mentioned Dutch disease.
Right. The source points to that risk. Basically, when you have this flood of foreign money coming in, it can strengthen the local currency.
Which makes imports cheaper.
Correct. Sounds good, but it also makes Nepali-made goods more expensive, both for locals and for export markets.
Ah, so it hurts local producers' competitiveness drops.
Exactly. It makes it harder for those domestic businesses, including family firms, to compete against imports.
Okay.
And adding to that pressure is Nepal's persistent import dependence and a large trade deficit.
Relying heavily on bringing goods in.
Very heavily. Food, industrial goods. The report flags a trade deficit nearing 1 trillion Nepalese rupees in just 8 months.
That's massive.
It is. And interestingly, customs duties on all those imports actually make up a huge chunk, like 44% of government revenue. Shows how embedded that import reliance is.
And the final piece of the economic puzzle, politics.
Yeah, political instability. Frequent changes in government create uncertainty that impacts investor confidence, makes long-term planning really difficult for businesses.
So, tying it all together, how do these cultural norms and economic realities play off each other for these businesses?
It's a constant interplay, really. Culture shapes economics. Those social networks built on trust, they can help with informal credit or boost sales through word-of-mouth marketing.
Right.
But then you have these paradoxes with modernization. Businesses need technology, but the labor force is shrinking due to migration.
Which is partly funded by remittances.
Exactly. And those remittances can distort the incentives for investing locally. Plus, that cultural emphasis on tradition can sometimes clash directly with the need for modern economic practices.
Okay, that context is absolutely vital. Let's zero in now on that first major challenge you mentioned, succession, passing the torch.
Yeah, this is often the make or break moment, isn't it? And in Nepal, with those strong family ties and traditions, it's especially delicate.
So what's the main takeaway from the report on succession?
The absolute #1 thing is the need for a formalized succession plan.
Not just assuming it'll work out.
Definitely not. Just hoping things will fall into place based on family ties. Well, the source says that leads to conflict, loss of control, even business failure. Planning needs to start early, and it needs to be open.
But open discussions about who takes over.
Yeah.
That sounds tricky, given the culture you described. Hierarchy, saving face.
It is tricky, involving everyone, the founder, potential successors, the wider family, maybe key non-family employees. That's important for transparency. But discussing it, especially if the younger generation seems eager, could be seen as disrespectful, like rushing the elders. Cultural sensitivity is paramount. The report even suggests sometimes using a respected mediator.
Someone neutral to help navigate those conversations.
Exactly. Someone who can help manage the discussion while allowing everyone to, save face.
So the how is as important as the what. Okay, how should they actually choose a successor? Is it always the eldest son?
Traditionally, maybe, but the report strongly advises against just relying on family ties or birth order.
What then?
Look at objective criteria. Management skills, relevant experience, genuine interest in the business, and crucially, a commitment to the core values and vision. It shouldn't just be an automatic handover.
Makes sense. What about the practical side? Legal stuff? Finances?
Absolutely non-negotiable parts of the plan. Transferring property, management powers, dealing with tax implications, inheritance laws. It all needs careful planning with legal and financial advisors who know the local landscape.
And how do you actually get the next generation ready? You can't just hand over the keys on day one.
No, gradual integration is the way to go. Bring younger family members in early. Give them increasing responsibility over time. Let them manage real projects, learn the ropes, earn their stripes, basically. Build practical skills.
This must be where that tradition versus innovation tension really comes to a head.
It's often the core of it, yes. The older generation has invaluable experience, traditional knowledge. The younger generation, often with modern education, exposure to global trends, they bring the drive for, say, digitalization, online marketing, new systems.
So how do you bridge that gap?
Successful succession means finding a balance, valuing the elders' wisdom while genuinely embracing the youth's push for modernization. It requires mutual understanding and respect.
And you mentioned invisible barriers for younger leaders before.
Yeah, those cultural norms, hierarchy, saving face, they make it genuinely difficult for younger members to voice radical ideas or challenge decisions, even constructively.
Even if the ideas are good.
Exactly. So the older generation needs to consciously create a safe space, an environment where new ideas can be shared, debated respectfully, without fear of causing offense or being seen as disrespectful.
Building a culture of dialogue. What about mentoring? Does that help?
Hugely important. Both ways, actually. Traditional mentoring, older to younger, passes on that core business knowledge, the values, the history.
Right.
But the report also highlights the value of reverse mentoring.
Younger teaching older.
Exactly. Younger members coaching senior ones on technology, digital trends, new market approaches. The source mentions positive examples from Chinese tech firms. It can really help bridge that digital divide and foster innovation.
That's a practical idea. Any other structures to help manage this transition smoothly? Prevent conflicts?
While relationships are key, the report suggests formalizing roles and responsibilities can reduce ambiguity and potential conflict.
Like job descriptions.
Yeah, things like clear job descriptions, maybe setting up regular family councils for discussion, defining decision-making processes. Even within these structures, though, given the culture.
Communication still needs care.
Exactly. Maybe still using intermediaries sometimes to ensure messages land correctly without loss of face. But formalization itself reduces the risk of conflict boiling up from confusion or perceived unfairness.
Okay, let's shift to the second big challenge. Modernization. Adapting to a changing world, especially with technology.
Yeah, this is essential for survival, let alone growth. The report looks at tech implementation across different areas.
What about on the customer side? Digitalization.
Definitely. Implementing things like CRM systems, customer relationship management to track interactions, understand needs better, personalize service.
Are those systems available in Nepal?
Oh, yes. The source mentions various options, international ones like Salesforce or HubSpot, but also local providers or customized solutions, and critically, e-commerce and having an online presence.
That must have boomed during the pandemic.
Hugely accelerated, yes. Platforms like Daraz, delivery services like Patho, Foodmandu, they're all part of this new ecosystem. And remember, word of mouth.
Yeah.
The report notes it works digitally, too. Positive online reviews, social media buzz. Businesses need to personalize their online offers. Interestingly, the source even gives a cost range for building a custom e-commerce site in Nepal.
Oh, yeah. How much?
Anywhere from around 20,000 up to maybe 250,000 Nepalese rupees. So it shows it can be accessible, not just for huge companies.
That's good to know. What about technology and agriculture, given how important that sector is?
Agritech is absolutely key for boosting productivity there. The report talks about a range of things. Improved seeds, more efficient irrigation like drip irrigation, small-scale machinery like mini cultivators, sprayers, water pumps, and even more advanced stuff is emerging drones for monitoring, mobile apps giving weather forecasts, market prices, advice, satellite imagery even.
Does it actually make a difference to farmers' incomes?
The potential impact is significant. The report cites one study from Bagmati province showing that adopting just one additional piece of relevant technology could increase farm income by over 20%.
Wow, that's substantial. Are there successful examples happening?
Yes, the report highlights things like the GeoKrishi platform. It provides weather info, farming advice, market links, and apparently reaches over 50,000 farmers.
That's impressive reach.
Yeah. And there are mentions of specific tech applications, like using Chinese GIS technology for cardamom farming and other government or private portals helping farmers.
Okay, so the benefits seem clear. The tech is emerging. What's holding modernization back? What are the roadblocks?
Well, the biggest barrier the source identifies consistently is access to finance.
Money.
Plain simple. Technology is expensive. Getting loans, especially for smaller businesses, smallholder farmers, it's tough. Microfinance institutions, cooperatives play a really important role here trying to fill that gap.
What else makes it difficult?
Staff training. You bring in new tech, new methods, you have to train people to use them effectively.
Makes sense.
But the report stresses training alone isn't enough. You need ongoing support from management, motivation, maybe rewards tied to using the new skills. Otherwise, people just revert to old ways. And it's not just technical skills, soft skills are vital too. Communication, problem solving.
And those infrastructure problems we talked about earlier must play a big role.
Huge impediment. Lack of reliable transport, energy, digital connectivity, especially rurally. It severely limits what's possible with modernization. That low mechanization rate in agriculture, only 8% using tractors, apparently is directly linked to poor infrastructure.
And I guess resistance to change itself.
Absolutely. Resistance to change is a major factor. Those cultural elements, traditionalism, hierarchy, maybe being risk-averse, especially among older generations, can make embracing new technologies a slow, difficult process. And, the report is clear. Modernization isn't just about buying gadgets. It's fundamentally about changing mindsets, changing management approaches. You can invest in fancy tech, but if the culture isn't ready, if people aren't trained and motivated, it might just gather dust.
What about government help? Are there support programs? Do they work?
There are various programs, yes. Subsidies for things like seeds, fertilizers, machinery. There's a big initiative called the Prime Minister's Agriculture Modernization Project, PMAMP, which focuses on creating zones for specific products, offering grants.
Sounds good on paper.
On paper, yes, but the report points to real problems with implementation.
Like what kind of problems?
Inefficiency, sometimes corruption, lots of bureaucracy, and crucially, unequal access. The benefits often seem to go to larger farms or those with better political connections. Smallholders, the ones who often need it most, can miss out.
Frustrating.
And that underlying infrastructure gap really limits how effective even well-intentioned subsidies can be. A grant for a machine doesn't help much if you don't have reliable power or roads to get products to market.
Right. Okay, one more aspect of modernization. Managing the physical side of things, supply chains.
Yeah, improving supply chains is critical. Nepal's reliance on transit through India, plus its own infrastructure limits, creates vulnerabilities.
So what can businesses do?
The report suggests building resilience, diversifying suppliers, developing local sources where possible. And for inventory management, maybe just in time is too risky given potential disruptions.
So keep more stock.
Maybe just in case or a hybrid model is more appropriate. Using modern systems for tracking inventory in real time helps too.
And actually getting goods to the final customer.
Last mile logistics. That's a massive challenge in Nepal with the difficult terrain and patchy infrastructure. The report suggests things like investing in route optimization software, setting up local delivery hubs, maybe partnering with logistics startups that specialize in tackling these challenges.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Let's tackle the third challenge, preserving heritage. You said this isn't just about history, but an asset.
Exactly. For many of these Nepalese family businesses, their heritage isn't just background noise. It's a core part of their identity and potentially a really powerful competitive advantage. It's about weaving the past into the present and future.
So what exactly counts as heritage in this context?
The report defines it quite broadly. It includes the company's history, the story of the founders, the family values that guide the business. It can also be traditional technologies or know-how like specific craft skills, secret recipes, unique products or services tied to that history, and importantly, the reputation for trust built over generations and the strong relationships with the local community. The first step is really identifying and valuing these often intangible assets. Documenting them is important too.
And how do businesses actually use this heritage, turn it into an advantage?
Several ways. Storytelling is a big one. Using the history, the founder's journey, the unique traditions and marketing, it creates an emotional connection with customers. Authenticity is really valued.
Any example?
Dwarka's Hotel is a prime example mentioned in the sources. They built their entire identity around preserving and restoring traditional newer architecture. It's basically a living museum, offering a unique luxury experience rooted in heritage.
That sounds incredible, creating a whole experience.
Exactly. Heritage can be the foundation for a truly unique customer experience. Another example, Bapatini Supermarket. While it's a modern retailer, it leverages its long history and deep understanding of the local market. The report notes this contributes to high customer satisfaction. Apparently, 70% felt their service needs were understood. Customers in Nepal value quality, service, cultural sensitivity, personalization. Heritage can underpin all of that.
So heritage connects to quality, too.
Definitely. Maintaining high-quality standards is often seen as integral to upholding the family's reputation and heritage. And another way is participating in Made in Nepal campaigns.
Promoting local products.
Yes, promoting local production traditions, often linking it to social values like fair wages or supporting women's empowerment like the Danfei clothing example, or formation carpets, preserving weaving traditions while fighting child labor. This really appeals to socially conscious consumers.
How do they manage that balancing act? Preserving this heritage while also needing to modernize seems tricky.
It is the creative challenge. How do you adopt modern business practices, new technologies, without losing the authenticity, the unique character that comes from your heritage?
Needs careful thought.
It requires creativity, maybe some experimentation, and importantly, involving the younger generation in rethinking how traditions can be made relevant and competitive today. Dwarika shows it's possible integrating deep heritage into a modern luxury service. The whole point of Made in Nepal initiatives is often to make traditional skills economically viable in a modern market.
You mentioned word of mouth being powerful in Nepal. How does heritage play into that?
In a culture where trust and personal recommendations are so vital, the authenticity and uniqueness that come from heritage are incredibly powerful fuel for positive word of mouth.
People trust what feels real.
Exactly. Satisfied customers who connect with the business's story, its values, its unique offerings, they become genuine ambassadors. Think about those examples again. Majeko Sakua, local bakeries. They thrive on this. The report even suggests encouraging user-generated content like customers sharing photos or experiences builds trust through that authentic voice.
What's the danger if businesses get this balance wrong? Focus too much on just copying global trends.
The report warns against diluting the heritage. If you just blindly copy global trends without adapting them to the local context or leveraging your unique strengths, you risk losing that very authenticity that customers value. You become generic, and you can lose customer loyalty built over generations.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to the fourth and final challenge, which seems to weave through all the others. Preventing internal conflicts, especially when things are changing.
Yeah, conflict can really destabilize a family business from the inside out. And again, Nepal's cultural norms, that hierarchy, the need to save face, add layers of complexity.
How does that saving face idea impact handling disagreements?
Well, because direct confrontation is generally avoided to keep things harmonious.
People might not say what they really think.
Exactly. Dissatisfaction might be expressed very indirectly or just simmer beneath the surface. While this avoids open arguments, it can mean serious issues don't get addressed until they become major problems. Managers need real sensitivity to pick up on subtle cues, and they need to actively create safe spaces where people feel they can voice concerns or opinions honestly without causing offense.
So you need ways for issues to actually surface safely.
Do. The report notes that formal legal conflict resolution can be complex, maybe inaccessible or expensive in Nepal, so effective internal systems become even more crucial.
Like what?
Using intermediaries is common culturally. Bringing in a respected family elder or community figure to mediate a dispute can help resolve things while allowing everyone to preserve face. And businesses meet a variety of feedback channels, formal and informal meetings, suggestion boxes, maybe anonymous surveys where people feel comfortable raising issues.
What about keeping people happy and engaged in the first place to minimize conflict, especially employees, family or not?
Employee engagement and retention are absolutely key for stability. Investing in training and development is one part of that.
We talked about tech skills, but also soft skills.
Yes, technical skills for the job, but also there's crucial soft skills.
Yeah.
Communication, teamwork, maybe emotional intelligence. But again, training needs follow-through opportunities to use the skills, recognition, rewards.
What else builds that positive, stable internal environment?
The report mentioned several things. Purpose-driven leadership, having a shared vision that goes beyond just profit, can be incredibly motivating. When employees feel their work contributes to something meaningful, they're more committed.
Makes sense.
Open book management, sharing financial information transparently. This builds trust, gives people a sense of ownership, and reduces the space for rumors or mistrust to grow. Developing social capital within the business, fostering trust, support networks, encouraging collaboration. This improves coordination and just reduces friction, allowing job crafting.
Letting people shape their own roles a bit.
Exactly. Giving employees some autonomy to shape their tasks and responsibilities can significantly boost satisfaction and helps retain talented people who want to grow. And related to that, encouraging entrepreneurship.
Supporting employees' own initiatives.
Yes, supporting employee ideas for new products, services, or process improvements. It harnesses internal innovation and helps retain ambitious talent who see opportunities for growth within the company. The report really stresses that in family businesses where personal and professional lives are so intertwined, transparency and engagement are powerful antidotes to mistrust. Lack of transparency is just fertile ground for suspicion and conflict. And investing in your people training development opportunities shows they're valued, which increases loyalty and reduces conflict stemming from feeling overlooked or unappreciated.
Managing expectations must be particularly vital when family members are working together.
Oh, paramount. Managing expectations and ensuring fairness is critical. Things like job roles, responsibilities, how performance is evaluated, how compensation is decided for family members involved in the business, these need to be crystal clear and applied consistently.
Avoids claims of nepotism or unfairness.
Precisely. Having fair assessment processes and clear potential career paths prevents conflicts that arise from perceived unfairness or favoritism.
And just the general atmosphere.
Fostering a culture of respect is fundamental. Valuing the contributions of all generations, the experience of the elders, and the new knowledge and perspectives of the younger members. Encouraging open, but always respectful, exchange of views is key to finding the best way forward together and building team spirit.
Okay, so we've unpacked the context and the 4 big challenges. Let's pull it all together. Based on the source material, what are the key strategic recommendations for these Nepalese family businesses aiming for sustainable success?
All right, the report outlines several core strategies. First, absolutely crucial, develop that comprehensive formalized succession plan.
Early, open, clear criteria.
Exactly. Involve stakeholders, define roles, prepare the successors, get the legal and financial ducks in a row, and always be culturally aware.
And for modernization, not just diving in head first.
No, a strategic, phased approach to modernization. Start with an audit. What do we actually need? Prioritize. Implement changes in manageable stages. Invest heavily in training alongside the tech. And actively seek financing options. Look into those government subsidies, even if imperfect, or loans from cooperatives. For agriculture, the advice is often to focus first on affordable, high-impact agri-tech, better seeds, efficient irrigation, maybe small mechanization.
What about managing heritage, not letting it fade?
Actively manage heritage as a competitive asset. Take inventory of those intangible assets, the stories, the skills, the values. Weave them into your brand identity, your marketing. Use that storytelling. Create unique customer experiences rooted in that authenticity, like the Dwarika's example, or participating in Made in Nepal.
And tackling the internal dynamics, the potential for conflict.
Build a culture of open dialogue and constructive conflict resolution. Set up those formal and informal feedback channels. Adapt communication for the cultural context, acknowledging saving face, maybe using intermediaries when needed. Encourage things like reverse mentoring to bridge generational gaps. Develop conflict resolution skills, and make significant investments in human and social capital.
Training, leadership, entrepreneurship.
All of that. Training, especially soft skills. Developing leaders within the family and among non-family employees, fostering entrepreneurship, deliberately working to build trust and team spirit.
And looking outwards, staying aware of the bigger picture.
Yes, businesses must constantly adapt to external challenges. Monitor those macroeconomic trends, remittances, inflation, trade balance, the health of the financial sector, like the rise in non-performing loans the source mentions.
Things that affect everyone.
Exactly. And stay on top of policy changes, tax laws, regulations from the central bank or other bodies that might affect lending or business operations.
Staying informed is crucial. Anything else?
Collaboration and networking are highly recommended. Talk to other family businesses, share experiences, learn from each other, participate in industry associations, maintain a constructive dialogue with government bodies to advocate for a better business environment. But the overarching message from the source material really is twofold. First, the need for an integrated approach. You can't just focus on succession or just on modernization or just on heritage. They're all linked.
Right, they affect each other.
And second, the absolute necessity of cultural calibration. You can learn from global best practices, sure, but you have to adapt them thoughtfully to fit Nepal's unique reality. The hierarchy, the importance of relationships, the communication styles. You can't just copy and paste.
Needs local adaptation.
Definitely. Proactive management planning for change, regularly reviewing strategy, consciously leveraging that unique heritage that's what's essential for long-term development, not just constantly reacting to crises.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear that family businesses in Nepal are navigating, well, a very dynamic landscape. A real balancing act between deeply rooted traditions and the urgent pressures of change.
Absolutely. And succession, modernization, preserving heritage, managing conflict. These aren't things you do once and tick off a list. They're ongoing processes. They require constant attention, adaptation as the world outside changes and as the family itself evolves.
But it also sounds like despite all the challenges, there's incredible potential there for businesses that can navigate this successfully.
Oh, huge potential. The report really highlights the unique strengths these businesses possess. If they can successfully combine their strong traditions, their deep family ties, their commitment to quality, with thoughtful, integrated modernization, that's a powerful combination.
Unique competitive advantage.
Exactly. In a world that seems to increasingly value authenticity, history, social responsibility, businesses that can genuinely weave their heritage into their modern operations can really stand out.
So the core principles for success really boil down to that integrated strategy, smart cultural adaptation, being proactive, and focusing on internal stability and engagement.
That sums it up well. It's about finding that often delicate balance to build a strong foundation for the future, for the next generation, within a really complex and fascinating environment. And maybe a final thought for you listening. Consider just how deeply interwoven tradition, culture, and economic reality are in shaping the future of businesses like these in Nepal, and what that might tell us about the perhaps universal challenge, really, of balancing progress and identity for businesses facing similar pressures wherever they might be in the world.